Hey YouTube, CSM10495 here. Brand new school year. Some new people might be taking AP Government or independent studying it. Um, Now, I actually finished the course last year and I made a couple review videos of some early chapters, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, but it seems like some other people on YouTube kind of like them, so I guess I'll go back and try to make a couple other chapters, so let's get this party started. Here we go. We got Chapter 3, Federalism. Now, I'm really just taking apart the chapter to really give you what you need, more so than reading the 30 pages of nonsense. So, here we go. Let me just tell you a little story. There was someone named, and I'm sorry, my handwriting is just terrible on this Wacom tablet. So, let's talk about this person, Suzette Kilo. So, this person had some property. Okay. We all like having property. We all have houses. And this property, officials really wanted to redevelop it. They want to redevelop the property to change it into pricey townhouses, malls, and a large hotel. All of this would lead to more tax revenue and I guess even a better looking neighborhood, leading to even more money. So there would be a lawsuit, because the city officials tried to take over the property, and this would go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Oops. So now we have our good friends at the Supreme Court, which we'll probably talk more about in a different chapter. But they upheld the city's decision, and this is a landmark decision here. Shows that, wow, I don't know how to spell. It shows property can be seized for public use. So yeah, they're allowed to take away your property if it's for the, I guess, even greater good of the public. And it can also, this also kind of applies. It could also can be seized for in order to develop the economy. That's kind of weird. I mean, this doesn't come up too much. I mean, it does come up, but it's kind of weird. Luckily this isn't taken to such an extreme level where they can say, hey, let's knock down these houses and rebuild them just to get more jobs. But hey, I guess we're kind of lucky. That is in distressed or poor, non-wealthy communities. So yeah, that's really. So anyway, so what is federalism? That's really the introduction. Let's jump into how this gets into federalism. So anyway, the reaction to this decision would result in policy making, and it would even result in because this really struck at home. So lobbying would begin to, get more popular, I guess. Especially with something that could be so close to home, and as a result of this lobbying, let me just say that this example is probably a little bit too specific, but it just gets the point across. I don't believe on the AP they're going to ask anything this specific, but hey, you never know. Lobbying more popular. Now, this really led to 34 states out of, well, there are a few more. I'm not really sure what year this was. 34 states made it more difficult to seize property. Now they did this on purpose. They did this kind of to overlook what the state governments have been saying about seizing and all. So states, as a result of the grassroots lobbying, they said you can't seize. This was really, to say, hey, I'm doing something for you. They can't seize your property because of what I'm saying, because in the end, the politics is all, working for the people. In addition, several other things the federal government has said have been changed by the states. Another example would be the minimum wage. The federal standard minimum wage is whatever, but a lot of states have about half of them. at least have made their minimum wage higher than the federal level. So really, the national government really leads in the in administering and making of policies, and yet sometimes the state government can also take a lead in making policy and leading off of what the national government has said to maybe better its people just a little bit more. So anyway, that's just a little bit of a tidbit for you. So let's just get back into federalism. Federalism, a system. It is a system in which national government shares power with local governments. Alright. So really they're sharing power. The federal government, the state government, they're both there. They look at different things. They work alongside each other. That's really the main point of federalism. The impact is widespread. You can see from federalism, a lot of things are getting done, whether it's state level, local level, or even federal level. This allows multiple means to get things done. So I guess that's a positive. But recently, there have been attempts to, and I guess the Republicans kind of, with Romney versus Obama 2012 election, the Republicans kind of follow this idea of devolution. Let me make sure I spell that right. Devolution, which is take power away from the federal government and put it back into state governments. Heads give to states. Alright. Now, there's always been tension between the federal government, the national government and the state government. Let me just give some examples of tension, just so we can see that, they were almost meant to work together at one point, but now we've seen tension. So let's see some examples. Slavery, of course, some states wanting slavery, some states not. Civil War, American history, la 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 la. Social programs like welfare, whether, what the retirement age should be. Social programs, states' rights, which really kind of goes into nullification, which is the idea that a state should be able to nullify or declare an act of the federal government to be non-applicable in their state. And I keep losing where this pointer is. Oops. And of course, mandates, which are when the feds say the states have to do something, and more so, it's really important because sometimes they don't even fund these. So we'll get back to funding later. So they have to do something. An example was years ago, the federal government let's go now. The drinking age is mandated at 21, I believe, but it's not even really a law. The state gets more funding if it does this, and of course states want funding; they need it. So anyway, so that's a mandate. Okay, so you've had a second to think about all that fun. So government structure and assessment. Let's just define government structure, I guess. Why not? Alright, so government structure is a political system. With local government in addition to national. Now this is at least in our case. Okay. Huh. Now, and in our case, the national government really does make the final decisions, because in the end, I don't know how to spell final decisions, because if a state says something, eventually federal government could fire back with an amendment to the Constitution or something along those lines to say that, hey, you can't do that. Whatever the state said here is no longer valid. So anyway, let's talk about two different types of governments, I guess. Oops. So we have federal and we have unitary. Now, in most cases, these two are very, very similar in terms of structure. It's just more of a matter of how they're applied. So, federal government, gives local government, I guess more power. While unitary government, uni means one. I don't want to say federal government, but central gov has most power. And an example of each: federal government's Canada, India, Germany, United States; unitary government, France, Great Britain, Italy. So why do we what leads us to protect subnational governments, and why do we keep this? I guess we'll just say why. Why do we have government structure in such a way? Well, there are a couple factors. One, we have a constitution that says it's going to be like this, and of course we've interpreted it differently. But in the end, we really do get a mishmash of what the founders may or may not have meant. We're supposed to, at least in theory, be following the preferences of the civilians. So, we're supposed to be, hey, the government is supposed to be a government for the people, by the people, in favor of the people. So, yeah. And also, I think this really defines it pretty well, actually. But let me just make a good distinction here. I'm gonna do this over here. Then the national government doesn't really govern individuals. So doesn't govern. Let me put a line here just to make sure I don't go into the other section. So they don't really govern the individuals, but the states do it to keep with national policy. So the states really do the governing of individuals. However, they do keep it in line with national policy. Of course, as I keep saying, they can't go against something the federal government ruled on, at least easily. They'd probably get in a lot of trouble. For an example, of course, see the Civil War. But anyway, so is this is this good or bad? So we'll say G/B, good or bad. What we have here, our federal system of government. Well, let's see. There is like a sense of confusion, and the confusion really stems from, who should do what. And a big example of this was after Hurricane Katrina. There was fighting between federal, state, and local levels as to who should provide funding, who should send people to help out, those in need. And this really led to the first responders and disaster relief workers being non-governmental, volunteers, Red Cross, charitable organizations kicking in, because the government agencies they're not able to turn the wheels fast enough to figure out who should do what. So So some people, I guess this could be similar to getting a law passed in that we need so much agreement that you know it could block progress, and that's not good. It could be gridlock making. That's bad. Because if we want change, we want it now, no matter what the consequences should be. It also you know therefore the more people in government, their interests are protected. So and usually the people in government are a little higher up on the social level than those outside of government. So it also protects powerful interests. That doesn't sound too good. And so those are like bad. I guess what people say would be bad of a giant federal government like we have here. But let's just see. Let me just put a negative up here just so we know we're talking about the negative. And up here, positive. Down here, positive. We'll say, hey, we're big, so we're all together, so we can be strong. So there's strength. We're so big we can be flexible as to how things should get done everywhere. We're not going to be hard on it about a certain policy shift or anything like that. And at the same time, hey, there's so many of us, let's stay free. It'd be really hard to take away freedoms when you have all those barriers in the way. So hey, I guess, this blocking of progress, maybe it leads to us keeping our freedoms. Hey, I'll leave that up to your interpretation. Let me just point that the Federalists, we always go back to what the founders thought. So let me just mention that Federalists, and this does come up on APs, I remember seeing practice tests that had this. Federalist number 10, explained how they'd be worried that small political units would be dominated by one probably larger conglomerate style faction. I hope I didn't say fraction. Maybe it said fraction though. So yeah. So that's really the good or bad. Also let me just go back to the good or bad for a sec. The Federalist 10, of course, is important to know, but another good, I guess, would be, since it's so big, more political activity, more people getting involved, I guess even more people voting. Because you could especially see this when you compare the amount of people voting in national elections to that of local. The national election always has a higher percentage, whether or not it's much higher is not really important. It just shows that we have more exposure to it as a result. Therefore, maybe we even care about it more. Therefore, leading to increased political efficacy. But hey, that's another chapter, a month or so away. Anyway. The founding. See, after you've gone through all this stuff once, you'll see that everything really kind of links together, and it's almost hard to talk about one topic without blabbing about another one. So anyway, the founding of the country. Let's talk about what the founders wanted, because that is a major theme of this course. This pen is really annoying. So the founders, they really wanted state and federal governments to not have authority over another. They not have authority over each other. Therefore, this would allow the people, of which the power should derive, to shift their support between factions much easier, so that one or the other can't trump the other one. But this plan really, as we can see now, it really didn't work out like that. When they were drafting this, there was no historical precedent. There was nothing ever like this before, and well, believe it or not, it really didn't work out to be like that because, as we know, the federal government is much more powerful in the end than the state government. Let's just mention the 10th Amendment. It really, it's an afterthought to the, it's the last amendment, of the Bill of Rights, and it's such an afterthought. It shows that they really weren't, they weren't, I don't want to say they weren't thinking enough, but, all it does is say, basically, I'm going to put this in layman's terms, whatever not given or denied from the federal government is the states. So hey, if the Constitution's never mentioned something that the federal government can do, then hey, I guess the states can do it. However, the elastic clause and the idea that the federal government can do whatever is necessary and proper kind of almost trumps this at times. So it gets a little bit hairy. It's very vague language, and I just mentioned that necessary and proper. So let me write that down because that's definitely something important. That's the elastic clause. So necessary and proper. So that says that the federal government can do really whatever they need to make sure, necessary and proper. They can do whatever is necessary and proper. It's so, this is called the elastic clause. It really allows them to do things, that weren't originally defined in the Constitution. It allows it to update with time, I guess. So, yeah, we'll stick with that. That seems to make sense. Let's see. Let's just do a quick Hamilton versus Jefferson. Let's talk about their views on supremacy. So let's see. So Hamilton wanted national supremacy. And an easy way to remember this is that Hamilton worked with the mint, which is a centralized thing. So you can remember, he worked with a centralized government. So, he would want that to be more powerful, therefore national supremacy. National government supremacy. Let me just make sure I make that obvious. So national government supremacy. Jefferson wanted state supremacy. And his reasoning for this, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, this allows, gives the people more power because the people live in the states, and then, they're able to elect people in the states much more easily than, because they can elect on a local level if they really wanted, much easier than on a federal level, at least at the time. There was no technology to see who was running and stuff like that. So it gives more, power to people, and we'll come back to a similar topic of this nature in a few moments, I believe. So take that in for a second. All right, let's get into. Well, what does federalism mean? I mean, we've gone over the definition, but it was still at that time no one really knew. They didn't know how it'd pan out. It's like writing the Constitution, and all the interpretations over the years are different. So there was finally something that kind of defined the state versus federal level, and that was the Supreme Court case. You do need to know this. This is important. McCulloch versus Maryland. And the idea was really the idea was, can they tax a federal can a state tax a federal bank, and then furthermore, could Congress charter a national bank for the federal government? So this really answered two questions. It said that yes, the federal government can charter a bank. And this was because at that time, with money and all, this was considered to be necessary and proper. Hey, it goes back over there. I told you it'd work out like that. And so hey, the states want to tax that. The states want to get funding from the federal bank in terms of taxes. Well, no. States can't tax federal banks. Well, why? Why can't they do that? Oh my God, I can't believe it. Well, they can't do that because guess what? In the end, as I pointed out earlier, that's a badly drawn arrow. The federal government is supreme. And they don't want to be taxed. They don't want to, lose money out of this. So why should they be taxed by something below them? Goes up the ladder. So there you go. I mean, there's also this idea of dual federalism, and that really goes along with an idea that national and state governments, they can almost work in their own spheres. So they each work on different things, so they don't conflict with each other, each having their own amount of power. And I guess kind of an example of this. I mean, this may or may not be a good example, but we'll see. You'll have to let me know if it works. Interstate commerce, trading amongst states. Commerce, that might be wrong. Versus intrastate, which is so intrastate is like between state. Wow, I don't know how to talk either. Between states, while intrastate is within state. So within one state. Now guess what? The state government is in control of this, and the federal government is in control of this. Why, you ask? Well, because the state would be in control of its own commerce, what happens within the state, while the national government would handle all times that states have to, I guess, work together for something, sending from one state to another, money shifting and all. So the national government works to handle that. They're in charge of that. They could, charge for that, whatnot. Anyway, I think that may or may not be a good analogy for it, but, oh well. I tried my best. Anyway, federal-state relations. So hey, how do these two get along? Well, there's one nice thing. They're grants, federal grants. So hey, whoops. That's the federal government giving money. There's more on this later in the book. I guess if I get to that chapter, we'll talk more about it later. But actually, we'll talk a little now, but it gets more in depth. So the grants, this is money given by the federal government to states. So, hey, it's free money for us to do stuff with. Isn't that nice sounding? And that started with land grants in the early years of the country, to be money given to states to allow them to expand their borders and build, give to people to build housing and continue onward, I guess, towards the frontier. And over time, there would be more and more of these. because more and more money coming from the federal government to be used by the states. So, so that would dramatically increase even. Now, why are these good? So, why are these so? Why are these so good? Excuse me. Well, they're so good because the federal government had. Now, this is why it's so good at first. The federal government had budget surpluses, so they had money. This especially in the 1880s. They also had the income tax, which is more of a source for their surplus. They could also print more money if they need. Inflation wasn't really as much of a factor then as it is, especially now. And they'd even, they'd consider this, the states consider this free money. They were being given money that they could use in, almost any way they wanted at first, and they could use it for any way, and then, if their constituents wanted something, they could use it for that and get reelected. It was a great cycle. Now, so around the 1960, even before then, this whole idea of free money started to change, in that there were restrictions applied to it. So, hey, we're giving you this money. You have to use it for this. Restrictions apply. Now, so the federal government would be giving you money, I guess with like a string attached, you could say. And so, that shifts the purpose used for the money. Now, now they're even, over time, it's getting harder and harder to get grants, especially now we're in a terrible, not really terrible, just not great economic times. So it's getting tough to get money to, get these grants. So this is leading to lobbying in Washington. And the lobbying hopefully will make it easier, not make it easier, get more money for, the state that the person, if I'm lobbying for New York, I need money for New York, and I get I go, and I get money back, hey, it looks great because we got more money, and, but poor California over there didn't get as much money because I got money. So, they're fighting in Washington over this, they're fighting for their constituents, and hey, if they get it, they're more likely to be elected in the long term. So let's talk about two different types of grants. So I guess this does come up a little bit in the textbook here. At this point, we have block grants and categorical grants. Now, a block grant is, it's basically they're giving you money, very few restrictions. So hey, it's almost free money again. Few restrictions. Now, a categorical grant is for specific purposes. So specific, you have to use this money for something. And so that's almost like, I guess you could, no. That's almost like having a string attached. You have to, and even then, a lot of the time, you would need to put up some local money in order to get that categorical grant. So, of course, states want this. They want to be able to get money without, without having to use it for a certain thing. They want money, and then they could put a certain amount here, a certain amount here. And, that's better off for them. So over time, both types of grants would be used more and more. However, eventually, categorical would be used more, and even grow faster. And both of these are still used today, but of course, categorical is used more because we don't have the money to just give around. So we need to find a specific reason, and then we say, here, we'll give you the money, use it for this specific reason. And so the receiving of this money has led to, you know, almost like rivalries between the states. And you can almost see this between like a state like California that gets a certain amount of funding and a state like New Hampshire that gets a certain amount of funding. And of course, California thinks that they should get more, a crazy amount more money because of their, population size. And a small state like New Hampshire, California might think, oh, they're getting too much money for their size. You should take away their money and give it to us. And it leads to just fighting on congressional floors and blah. So that's increased, and then as I said with populations, especially, where's my pen? Okay, with populations meaning so much, the census, that form every 10 years, that counts population, is more important now because it really does determine the grants and funding per state. Because hey, if there's a new 50 million people in New Hampshire, I know it's a crazy number. If all of a sudden 50 million people who weren't in New Hampshire 10 years ago are now there, their funding has to go up. But if they don't fill out the census form, they're not going to get, their state is not going to get as much funding. So just a little bit to think about. So look this over for a second or two. Alrighty. Oh, we're almost done. I'm running out of spit here. I'm getting tired. Alright. So anywho, federal aid and federal control. Where's the pen? Okay. Alright. So there's like a fear. We're scared. Why are we scared? We don't like having Washington D.C. control us. And how does this control happen? Well, they have the money. We will do what they need or what they want, so we get money. So we're scared, they hold us in their hand, and if they all of a sudden don't want to give us money, we will not get as much money, and it could significantly degrade things in a state. Hopefully it won't happen, but it definitely is something to be a little scared of, especially in an older country where technology wasn't so big. They could easily cut off money for a state without people in the state even knowing. But now that we know, it's unlikely that they'd do that because it would lead to mass outrage, of course. Let's see. Let's go back to I mentioned earlier mandates. Let's talk about them for another minute. Mandates. Most of them concern civil rights and the environment. So we're mandating that certain things have to happen. You can't have black water fountains and white water fountains. A good mandate, I guess, as an example, would be desegregation of schools for civil rights, and environment, mandating certain lands to be environmentally. I can't think of it, but for them to become like to stay unhumanified, I guess, without people. All right. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm drawing a blank here. That's not good. So anyway, a big problem with it is that oftentimes they're not funded enough. So the mandate might say that, hey, this has to happen, but they might not give enough money for that to happen. So the states have to take money out of their own pockets or raise taxes or figure something out to make sure it happens because it has been mandated. Now, how much money do you get? How much does it seem like they get per mandate? I guess it kind of depends on the field. This isn't really as important for the AP here, but I'll just say it anyway. For the environment, you get a high amount of money. For education, low amount of money, which is kind of sad. And for health, for making sure that Medicare, Medicaid, all that stays funded per state, that's a medium. But this number is definitely going up for health, especially with Obamacare and federal health insurance and all of that stuff happening. But hey, the AP hasn't caught up to the times. So anyway, so the states also so the federal government can give money through a mandate, in order for it to happen. But they can also take away money from states. And that can happen via federal taxing, and laws that expose or that make states liable. So there's some laws that say, hey, the states have to pay for this, and the federal government makes it, and then something happens, and the states have to pay money that they wouldn't have had to before that decision was made. So hey, that's not too good. Well, that sucks for the states, but hey, it works out well for us in the end. So yeah, there have been court orders on all these things, which go back to mandates. They've happened: schools, desegregation, prison, busing, hiring practices, and even police brutality is a big one also. Hey, we don't want that. So something that people have noticed, when I say people, I mean like civilians. So hey, we've noticed that the funding, through grants, yada yada yada, used for Washington's needs. So it's used for national things more so than the idea of local grants for local needs. All right. Okay. So let's go back up here. Let's talk about this kind of funny question. Are we in a devolution, revolution? Devolution's the idea that I think I said it earlier, so I'm not going to write it again. Is to give money, not money, to give power to the states over the federal government. So take away power from the feds, give it back to the states. Let's talk about there was President Reagan. Let's talk about what he did, what his administration did. So the Reagan administration, his administration consolidated categorical grants into block grants, which made states happy because they could use the money more easily. Okay, that makes sense. And but however, at the same time, less money goes to the states. But guess what? As a result of the block grants, fewer strings attached, so they could use the money as they wanted. And also, the states started, this led to states spending more money, more from their own tax revenue and yada yada yada. Not as important, but still factual. And now let's see, what have the Republicans wanted? So let's talk more about Republicans. Talk about them in the 90s. And this is still mostly true for today. They want to roll back federal programs. They want less money being spent by the federal government. That's their whole thing. Republicans, more conservative. Um, so it kind of raises a question: is like the big national government on the decline? Like, will this be a thing of the past soon? And I guess you we'll answer this question years from now. It's just a question posed in the textbook that I found kind of interesting. The Republicans want it this way. Meanwhile, the liberals, Democrats want it the other way. They're going to keep fighting each other, but eventually one of the sides has to prevail. More so. So is the government going to get even bigger, or will it get smaller? But let me kind of answer this question for you. Let me just say that federal spending is up. So federal spending is up, so I guess they're spending more money. Federal debt is at all-time high. Yeah, we're, what is it, 15 trillion in debt? Yeah, we're broke. U.S. government could have defaulted by now, probably. While at the same time, local spending has also increased. And more government regulation. More of the government saying things need to be like this, and and they're saying that because they want things to be better for you. But hey, I'll leave that up to you. But I guess something I'm noticing, the textbook is kind of a little bit one-sided on this. So let me just point something else out. I mean, this all seems to point towards the idea that it's not in the decline. But let me also let me go against that by saying that there has been a decrease, a dramatic decrease even, in welfare rolls. There's less being given to it, and then there are more and more people on it. You know what? This isn't. I mean, this isn't. This isn't even really true anymore. I mean, this was changed by the late 2000s economic troubles. But before that, there was a decrease. So I guess it doesn't seem as though the big government is on the decline. That's really the point I'm trying to get at. But hey, we can revisit this topic later at some point. Congress and federalism. Are we, this is actually my favorite part, so I like this part. It really, so we do have a central government, right? But at the same time, a big part of that's Congress. They do represent the local, the states, right? Let me. So at the same time, I mean, is the federal since then therefore is the federal government just run by the states? It's kind of an open-ended question. I mean, I just like that part of the textbook. I think it's kind of almost funny, and at the same time, I mean, while they're representing them, is their party, their local party, as relevant, or are they just going to do what the state wants at the time? Or do they just, they just do what the state wants? And, that's just another way to look at this whole idea, hey, Congress, Congress is literally just composed of members from each state. So isn't that the means of the state governments reaching into the federal government? Or at the same time, when you combine them all, do what the states want not really get represented? I'll leave you guys on that question. This is CSM 10495, Chapter 3, Federalism. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.